Welcome to the Condor DM Show. We have a special focus tonight on the Forgotten Realms. It's going to be fun. Look, when I cover these worlds, I'm covering things from the vantage point of TSR, the old school. So when I say Forgotten Realms, I'm not talking about the Forgotten Realms as you know it in WotC or through video games. I'm talking about a version of the Forgotten Realms that comes from the old school and paints up the world, people, and groups in many different ways. It has a very different take on the Forgotten Realms as far as feel, right? Details can be very similar, but there's a different feel, a different approach. Now, the first part is going to be, for people that know the Forgotten Realms, the first part is just me telling you. It's a little bit scripted. I wrote it down so I know, like I remember it, right? It's my first experience with the Forgotten Realms when I was younger. And I want to talk about that. Now, you might notice my arm is up a bit here every so often. Yeah, pulled the muscle, doing the shoveling of the snow, and it hurts a bit. So this takes away the pain every so often if it bothers me, right? So you might see me do that a few times. But yeah, the first bit is just a little, hey, ignorance from my end trying to figure out the Forgotten Realms. But then I actually go into the Forgotten Realms. Now, there's a lot to cover for TSR Forgotten Realms. So what I've done is I think I've noted down just about everything there is. And then I make notes with each thing. Well, I'll mention those like little snippets I picked out to sort of represent these things and then talk around that, right? Instead of writing scripts or something for each area, I don't like doing that. But I do get some stuff to read off, and then we'll talk around that. Now, at the end of this, I covered NPCs. Now, I decided I would cover two, and I was looking at them, and I could have done Elminster and Drizzt, and I was like, you know what? They're going to be a surprise. But I picked two NPCs that I personally have not seen often talked about or covered, and we'll talk about them. If you know Elminster, I'll give you a hint. One of the NPCs is connected to him. I'll say she's well known if you know Forgotten Realms, but I don't just hear her often talked about, like, say, the way Elminster or Drizzt is talked about. Cheers, my friend. Cheers. It's going to be a fun night. I got tons of stuff to say on Forgotten Realms. Now, note, I'm going to go to the end of my notes. I don't think it will be before an hour. I think it's going to take me longer than an hour. We're going to see. I promise tonight I'm going to finish the entire thing. Now, if you're noticing any problems, let me know at Restream if this is glitching or if there's connection issues, right? Hey, be nice to be informed if there's any issues. It's hard for me to know on my end if there is. Let's see. Last couple times with Restream has been good, but I recently had some technical difficulties, which is not something I want to go through with that gimmick, right? So I'm still on the edge of hoping this thing is still functioning the way it should be. So if we're good, we're good. Okay. So TSR-era Forgotten Realms. Generic. When I first seen it and skimmed it, I thought right away, this is a very generic world for adventuring. After learning more, I realized there was more there, but I wasn't that far off. Like I don't feel like my initial somewhat assumption was completely untrue. So I'm thinking there's a generic side to this thing. It feels like it's just meant where you can just play with it the way you want to. That was sort of the way it's skimming across. It was like a lot of things seemed optional to me. You could use the group, you could use the NPC, or you could jump 50 years ahead and say, that king is dead, that group is gone, here, I'll do this, right? That's sort of the way I felt about this thing as I skipped through it. And I was someone who liked to make up my own stuff, so my mind went right there right away. But I've encountered a lot of people since that said there was a similar feel to the Forgotten Realms when it first came out that they had too. Like Dragonlance, all these different worlds like Ravenloft seem to have like guidelines, borders, things that control the DM and the players, limitations, right? Stuff like that, that you just felt like Forgotten Realms in a way was a more open, but somewhat generic world in a way where you could do more adventures towards magic, taking sort of like the chains off of certain things, the limitations that you see in some of the other realms. Even Greyhawk has its limitations, and you go to these other places. Forgotten Realms was more like, here's a place where you can do a little bit more screwing around, right? Like you can push the boundaries a bit more. Generic gaming was easy to do at the Forgotten Realms setting. It really was. Bend it to your will. I think many DMs use the setting to freely push more of their own ideas without the world handcuffing them, as I was saying. With Forgotten Realms, you could use the groups and NPCs offered or just invent your own. That's really, really true. You really could just make up your own stuff. And there was enough guidelines to the rest of the cities and that you could sort of just adapt in and say, okay, I'm going to jump so many years and remove certain groups out of my way, remove a certain king out of my way, and maybe just do some adjusting. So if you felt like something was holding you back in a way, I just seen so many people freely do that in a way they did not do it with some of the other worlds, right? At least I didn't see a lot of people doing that with the other realms so freely as they did it with the Forgotten Realms. Basically the world could be emptied out and redesigned. In the end, overall, it's not a generic setting, but I felt back then, and still feel to this day, that is a very easy world to bend to your will, instead of it controlling you through limitations. Like, that's the one benefit to, I've heard so many people sort of say, like, oh, that's a standard. Like, they throw it away like it's generic world, but I'm like, I thought it was sort of its strength too, because it was saying to a DM, okay, how do you want to do this? Instead of, here, you got to follow this. Now, you could follow guidelines, or again, it didn't take much, because instead of them being right in the game, delved in, like, say, a Ravenloft or a Dragonlance, they were only pressured through politics. So you could adjust the politics, right, for any reason. You could have the gods not paying attention. There's a lot of good things you could justify once you understand the TSR Forgotten Realms world. You just justify why they're either there is chaos through them or not, right? Now, that's just my sort of silly lead-in. That was my very immature, complete take when I first started playing around with the Forgotten Realms. I really did like to create my own stuff. So when I looked at it, I always looked at it from that point of view. Okay, so that's not the Forgotten Realms thing I'm doing tonight. That's just my personal, hey, I seen this as generic. Now, I think some of what I'm going to say somewhat backs it up going forward, but in a way it doesn't either. There's a lot more details to this world than I'm even going to actually mention here. There's too much. There's so much that I think I'm going to cover everything, except for I'm not going to cover every NPC at the end in detail. So, I'll cover the groups. I'll cover many things that you want to know. But when it gets to the NPCs, I've chosen to, just because there is a lot of NPCs from the TSR era Forgotten Realms. I mean, and if I try to do backstories, even on the Almitster Drizzt, even back then, they'd still have tons and tons of stuff to say on that, which would, wow, I could do an hour on each. To be honest, I could do an hour on Drizzt, just on him alone. I could do an hour on Almitster, even with just TSR era content. Like, that's how good their stuff is, if I really wanted to draw it out, right? Okay, the Forgotten Realms. A world full of magic. A place where history, gods, and politics matter. A setting meant to support many different playstyles, not just epic heroes, hence the generic side of the setting. It's meant to be open to everything. In a way, it's trying to be. It is a world where people have accused the Forgotten Realms trying to be everything to everyone. There can be some truth to that if you look through all the things you could dig into. Okay, now, the first area I'm going to cover is one of the more extensive areas of the Forgotten Realms, is the gods. So we're going to go over the gods right away. We're going to get think about that like the creation of the world type of thing. So we're going to start at the starting point, which I think is the start at the gods. The gods of the realms allow players to design very unique cleric characters. They would give out very unique benefits. So this is one difference with the Forgotten Realms. There could be some options you'd find through players' books, but when you got to the Forgotten Realms, if you really went into the material out there for the gods, you could make very unique clerics with all kinds of unique options and benefits, depending on what god they choose to worship in the Forgotten Realms, right? And there's good, bad, the whole 9 yards. Gods were very real, very active, but not always helpful. They could be accused of causing more chaos than ever saving something. It's almost like the only time they were doing good was when they were stopping other gods from doing bad. So there's not a lot of times where you could say just the push forward on the world was just, oh, a god being nice to you. It's the bad outweighs the good in reality. And there's a whole history, a deeper history to the gods, that if you wanted to go farther beyond what I'm going to tell you, you could find out there's such a deep history that there is so much chaos amongst the gods that, yeah, they're really not that helpful. That's a real statement that holds true. Divine power flowed through clerics or chosen or avatars or artifacts. So, like, if they were giving out these special, unique divine, like the cleric magic, the things that they could choose somebody like a champion. It could be just one of their priest clerics, or like an avatar, something that is sort of coming and representing them, something mighty powerful, depending, and just different artifacts that are related to the gods. Yeah, you can access their powers through these items. So the gods themselves, I say Ao. I always say Ao. So we'll go Ao. The overgod, not worshipped, not prayed to. Ao exists to enforce cosmic balance and keep gods in line. He famously caused the time of troubles. This is the top god, causing the time of troubles, proving even gods answer to something higher. So basically what you do find out is on top of making the trouble, during this period called the time of troubles, you find out even the so-called God. I mean, this is the God. Like, it's almost like he's the God of gods, which is pretty much what he is. Yet, there is still something above him to respond to, right? So that's sort of the hint there. TSR doesn't go all the way into it. I imagine WotC goes more into these things, but remember, we're focused on the TSR era of the Forgotten Realms. So then we jump over to Mystra. Okay, instead of having that just bust everything for a second, good timing, right? In the middle of a snowstorm, we have alarms. That's great. Okay, let's continue. Sorry for the pause. Mystra, goddess of magic and the weave. Now, if you haven't done a lot of Forgotten Realms and you played a bit of the Baldur's Gate 3, because I know a lot of people that have played that don't know Forgotten Realms. Some of the language you're definitely going to hear that's going to seem like familiar, like the weave, right? Mystra, definitely. Magic flows through her, like for real. If Mystra falls, magic breaks, as you would know from the game. She empowers chosen. Oh, yeah. See, modules is something I want to do, especially at the end of the realms. You notice I haven't been going over like the detail of the modules for Ravenloft. I am going to do a module, a whole stream on them, where I'm going to pick at least 2 modules for every single realm, like at least 2 adventures that I think are really good. And we're going to go through the details of these adventures on the stream, just the way I'm doing with all these worlds, like really plan it, really put the notes down and let people know what they are, sell these. It's like, here's the worlds, here's the things you can go buy, like the modules, the adventures, the third-party stuff. I'm going to go over all kinds of products related to second edition this year. Like I said, it's not just going to be all worlds, but it's manuals are going to be, or modules are going to be one of those things I cover at one point. So, okay. So she empowers, chosen, manipulates, even quietly, treats mortals as long-term investments. So it's if you serve her, she will invest it in you over the long term. It's something you can count on as long as you're loyal in your service to her. That's why she'll choose somebody like a champion, right? But understand, she's still using you. Like, she's loyal to you. It's almost like a guilt. Like, I'm using you and I feel bad, so I'll hug you. She really is like this. This is her. Like, I'll hug you, I love you, right? But I am powerful and I need to use you and manipulate you, right? And she can be very devious on that end. But reasons why can vary. And then there's Terror. Terror is God of justice and law. Blind, stern, uncompromising. Terror is about cosmic justice, not mercy. Clerics are judges first, warriors second. So it's, how can I say, you're like the guy in the uniform that shows up to judge if somebody is a heretic or not, right? Like, you might be that type of judge, right? It could be that, but really, when it just comes down to justice, they take care of courts, they can do all of these kinds of things. But depending on how extreme the worshipper is, they could go as far as, well, death is the suitable punishment for your crime. If it is justice, it is justice. That can vary. Terror is an interesting god for characters to believe in, because you can see players in the game try to stretch out the meaning of what terror is, because in the way I'm representing terror to is in the way we're sort of represented in the box sets and the things. Like, you're never just given like a fucking book on terror. You're given terror, and it's not like over years all this adds up, but when you're initially meeting a lot of this stuff, it's little write-ups, little fucking just details. I'm like, okay, that's terror to you. And if you play Forgotten Realms for a few years, whatever that's developed into through use of terror, that's terror to you, right? So I'm sort of giving to you, I think, more in the real D&D old school sense. Instead of trying to give you like a fucking script on these gods, I'm giving you the more like the noted elements you would get from looking at these things from an old school lens. But then we're talking around too. The next god is Torm, god of duty, loyalty, and righteous obedience. The embodiment of do what must be done. Often associated with paladins and lawful champions. Torm is your good guy. Hey, good guy. Light shines down on this guy. This is the good guy of good guys, right? He's your hero. I mean, you can be that through Torm. It's easy, right? Torm is saying be honorable. That's sort of this God thing. Loyalty, righteous obedience, right? And just doing the work, actually getting out there and, being loyal to people, putting that work in life, right? So, you should be a character of, or some type of person that would believe in that would be pushed to be in that mindset, that righteousness. Then there's Helm, god of vigilance and protection, unyielding, emotionless, absolute. Helm follows orders even when it leads to his own end. So he's the type that it's emotionless and unyielding. Like, he's just absolute. When he says, I will protect you, that's no matter what. The meteor's coming. He can't withstand it. He goes in front of you anyway. If you're going to die, he's going to die with you, because whatever he has commanded out loud, whatever order he's given or gives himself, will be absolute. He will follow through. If he says, I fight that being, but that being has a sword that can kill him, he must put himself in the danger zone and fight that being with the sword that can kill him. There is no escape once an order is given. That's Helm. Lathander, god of dawn, renewal, and beginnings. Optimistic, idealistic, sometimes dangerously naive. Believes the world can always be made better even when history says otherwise. Oh, we got a dreamer here, baby. We got a dreamer here. They say it can't be, I say it can be. Right? Someone who's going to conquer the world. It's a new dawn. It's new. Will overcome the old. Chanti, goddess of agriculture and fertility. One of the most widely worshipped gods in the realms. Practical, patient, and deeply tied to mortal survival. Wow. Now she's all about helping mankind, right? She's agriculture, fertility. She's birth rate. She's the one who's going to be. You're going to be making kids because of her. She's going to be making sure you and your children are fed. She has an investment into your life. Like it's almost like this god's meaning is behind your existence. So, in a way, I'd say this god cares probably more about the living beings than probably most other gods, because she is so like her purpose becomes like, well, if they're not surviving off what I'm doing, she has failed. That's sort of how she'd probably have to look at this, right? Shanti, goddess of agriculture and fertility. Fertility, baby, yeah. I hear you. Okay, Tempest, god of war and battle. Not evil, not good. It's, how can I say? Honor, bravery, skill, fair in combat, not conquest or cruelty. So he look, Tempest is about war, but Tempest is an honorable warrior. And his followers are to be honorable in battle. They like battle, but not for the intent of doing wicked with the action of battle. They are the ones going to rise up at the wall and protect the city. They're going to fight the war against the oncoming onslaught of ogres, goblins, orcs. That's who Tempest is. Oma, god of knowledge, lore, and inspiration. Neutral keeper of truth. Doesn't care how knowledge is used, only that it survives. So there's your record keeper. The one who understands history, knows all the knowledge, what happened, where it started, why it started. Has the answer. You weren't sure? Was it this god? No, he'll know. Oh, we're going to get into some of the video game gods, I call them, because they're going to be gods that people will recognize right away. Bane, god of tyranny, fear, and domination. Worshipped by conquerors and despots. Believes peace is achieved through absolute control. Now, if you played the recent Baldur's game, you would definitely know that about Bane. It's a warped way of going after peace, right? Real peace is gotten through control. We have to be evil to be good. Okay? Baal, god of murder and violent death. Personal, intimate, evil, not war, but killing. See, it's his cult focuses on assassination and terror. So they're not looking to start a war with you. They look to manipulate the world through death, through violence, through murder. Right? So it's like, imagine if you looked at the world, you see people killing each other, they're doing all the wicked things. The idea is this type of guy would be the one probably behind the wicked things you're seeing. Right? The demon. Like, it's how medieval people tried to judge it. And then imagine, and that's what you get with a lot of this fantasy. when you're looking at fantasy like this and you're trying to even wonder how this all comes together, it's like, imagine if you were in the mindset of medieval people. What would you think is causing something to happen? So imagine in D&D, what happens is instead of it being some myth or some ghost, it's okay, it's real. The thing that is making them go violent is there, right? That's the idea. Ball. Merkel, god of death, decay, and fear of dying. Not about balance, it's about dread. Rule the dead with cold. How can I say, with a cold fear of it is coming and there's nothing you can do about it. He likes to sort of go after people, in that way. There's nothing. There's no going back. There's no coming back from this. God of death and decay. The end is coming. He's the god of fear of dying. Get it right? So he wants to haunt you in that way. It's more personal, intimate, right? But yeah, it's about dread. Just like Ball in a certain way when it comes to that sort of personal, I'm not out for this type of chaos, I'm out for this other manipulation chaos, right? Shar, goddess of darkness, loss, and secrets. Opposes Saloon. I had to write that down because Saloon is another god that rivalry just needs to be mentioned out loud. It's still just as strong back then as it would be in any WotC content you're reading about, I would imagine. I haven't read all the WotC stuff, to be honest. Shar doesn't want destruction. Like, she doesn't want to destroy. She just wants to end. It's a weird thing. It's like turn everything off. Nothing. You'd be like, is she trying to blow the world up? No, she's trying to figure out how to end everything. And death, evilness, a lot of these things will lead to that type of end. The idea of being kind or good, those things would actually probably manipulate that person back towards not wanting that, right? That's Shar. Shar is a very deeply weird goddess. Saloon, goddess of the moon, stars and navigation, protector of travelers and those lost in darkness. Eternal rival, of course, Shar. They don't like each other. I'll let you personally look into that. I just decided not to totally cover that, but throw the hint out there. So if you didn't play the game, I want you to know that those two just catfight, right? Catfight. Talos, god of storms, destruction, and natural disasters. Chaos incarnate. Worshipped through fear, not love. So he likes to scare people into, bowing the knee to him. Umberly, goddess of the sea's wrath. Sailors appease her. They do not trust her. She's not like some good goddess. They just do this so nothing happens. Capricious, cruel, and respected. So she's not chaos completely. She'll leave you alone if you pay your dues, right? Pay your dues, she's happy. At least when she's in a decent mood, right? But if she's in a bad mood, paying the dues might not work either. Okay, now we get to the lesser deities. So what I just went over, every deity I just talked about there are the main core gods of the Forgotten Realms. Quite a few, hey? And I just went over quite a few gods, so they got to line up, and over the years, they've added way more content, but even the lines I've just given you are enough to sort of play with them right away. So even the information I've given you here, you can imagine it out from what I'm saying to you and mess around with the gods in the Forgotten Realms, and that's sort of how they're represented to you. They're not given scripts for every or like big drawn out pages for every single deity. Some of that content does come out later. But it's not how it's always introduced to you. More direct this way. Lesser deities, Ilmater, god of endurance and martyrdom, takes suffering onto himself, deeply compassionate and tragic. Means he'll run into a tragic end because he's so caring and kind and whatnot, right? Like that's a real thing for him. So he'll go into that process. And then there's Kellamore, right? So some of the pronunciations for some of the names I have here are quite unique. Kellamore, because I haven't used every god or played with every god, so some of these things I'm not used to personally pronouncing. Kellamore, later god of the dead. So he's not like god of the dead instantly. Later god of the dead. TSR-era though transition. So he transitions within the TSR content. Focuses on fair judgment after death. More humane than Merkel, but still stern. So Kellamore, even though he's a lesser deity, becomes sort of like a kinder version, I guess, if you want to look at it in that way, than Merkel. Sirach, god of lies, madness, and strife, unstable, ambitious, and dangerous, represents chaos born from ego. So nothing good. Soon, another lesser god, one that I personally have messed with. Not messed, but used in gaming. Goddess of love and beauty, promotes passion, art, and pleasure. See where I'm going with that, right? Often underestimated, her faith is powerful. Then there's a lesser god called Mask, god of thieves and shadows. I don't know if you knew about all this, the big giant deity system. See, Forgotten Realms seems so generic until you do dig into it. And you're like, there is so much here, and we're not even halfway through my notes yet. Not even close. We're just doing the gods. There's so much more to go. So Mask again, god of thieves and shadows, clever, duplicitous, and charming. Encourages skill over brutality. Next is Lyra, god of illusion and deception. Reality is flexible under her influence. Reality is flexible under her influence. Just take that in. Favor misdirection over lies. So instead of being the type, like her clerics might not sit there and lie to you, but you might notice they will redirect what you're saying. Like, oh, were you talking about like there'd be no exact lie told to you, but you could be playing the deceit game. The word salad, as they would say. Sylvanus, god of wild nature, old, slow, and patient, represents nature that does not care about civilization. So he represents the wild, right? So when I say he represents the wild, there's no respect for the unnatural city. Like it's, how can I say, if you're out like living like natives, say Indians back in the day, and you were out living on the land and you were sort of taking into nature and you weren't building up artificial towns and cities, you become a part of his world. But outside of that civilization, that sort of artificial thing, no, he is not a supportive of that. Cranky. Malar, god of the savage hunt, predation, blood, and dominance. Fared even by druids. So druids can get quite powerful, quite scary with their magic, but the god Malar, man, he put it this way, it's predation, blood, and dominance. It's because he can control. It's a fearful thing that he can take control, right? And control is what he's after, dominance and pain. Okay. Talona, goddess of disease and poison, worshipped secretly and desperately. Her cult thrives in fear and plague. Okay, so we're going to get into a different section. That was the lesser gods. Now I'm going to get into the demigods, the racial deities, like the elf deities, and that are meant to not just be general. They're more direct only gods for that race. So, chief god of the elves, Corlin, art, magic, and war, symbol of elven decline and lost glory. So it's Corlin Laerthian, I think that's the name, chief god of the elves. This guy focuses on art, magic, and war. But the symbol that the god uses is a symbol of the decline of the elven race, which is a storyline in the TSR Forgotten Realms. This decline, like it's almost like going back to the idea, like Lord of the Rings, is the elves are leaving the world type of thing, right? So we see a decline of elves. Lilith, goddess of the drow, cruel, manipulative, demanding, rules through fear and betrayal. Exactly what you expect. Perfect type of goddess for a thief. Moradin, creator and protector of the dwarves. You got the name. Moradin, creator and protector of the dwarves, forged stone and tradition, represents endurance and stubborn survival. Well, that's pretty much it, isn't it? Hard grinding work, hard rock body of the dwarf. They are the type they'll build stuff out of they'll build a city out of a piece of rock, right? So and they live long enough to put in time and work on things that humans could never imagine. Easy 50 years on like one project. You get to their castle and the thing is so enforced that you're just like, how was this even made? Right? So they can make some amazing things. And there's always stories, especially Lord of the Rings, and even up to the D&D world, where the idea of dwarven kingdoms or forts were just some of these ancient stories were like, wow, like just amazing things that you couldn't get through that wall. Even gods couldn't crush that down. Stuff like this. Statements like this you would hear. Okay. Garl Glittergold, chief gnome deity. Trickery, humor, and invention. Fights evil with cleverness, not force. So he's not a god of evil, even though he's a god of trickery, but it's humor and invention. And he's, how can I say? It's like watching The Mentalist, Jane. If you watch the show The Mentalist, there's a TV show, The Mentalist, American show, many years ago, but he's a perfect example, I guess, of what this would be saying. He's trickery, invention, like just a mind and humor, sort of funny with the way he does it. But he takes down evil with this, not that he uses physical force to do it, right? So it's the idea. It's almost like the investigator who's going to call you out, and figure out what you did. Just be able to, boom, with words, figure out everything around. But be funny while they're doing it, right? Entertaining. Okay, Yandala, protector of halflings, home, hearth, and safety, quiet strength over heroics. So she's all about, how can I say, when she says safety, it's almost like, look, you do protect each other, but no, you don't go carelessly running out to find the person if they're off by themselves, and that would be dangerous for the entire little village. Right, so you can't take the careless heroic action for the big chance of maybe. This god is more aimed at saying no, safety. You make sure you're secure. Like you play the safe, cautious game at life. That's how you do it. You're strong, but you're strong because your will is to hold down the fort type of thing. Like you put your will somewhere else instead of you see yourself as, oh, I need to be a hero. Run out. You go, yeah, but wait, what about the people behind me? How much of a hero am I if I run off and leave them here? in danger. So it's almost like trying to switch it over and say, become a hero, but in a different direction, like justify it this way. And that's the gods. I just went over every general main god, every general lesser god, and then over the specific races gods. Now, more content comes out with WotC and that, of course, like I said, but that's pretty much the gods TSR era put out. Now we're going to move on to some other sections. And well, we're 40 minutes and we're halfway. I'm happy. That's good. Okay. Not bad, you know. I thought this could potentially take 2 hours, depending on how long this took to get down on the notes. So, magic was everywhere and dangerous. No, not if you go into the deeper, nerdy stuff, Black Rose. And now what I will do is, remember I said if I feel like there's stuff missing and people want to mention it to me, I do plan to do a stream of, hey, what did I miss? Let's go back and do like sort of a whole stream just focused on going over maybe some of the things I didn't say with Ravenloft and didn't say with Dragonlance or say the Forgotten Realms, and we'll mention them, right? If I skipped over something, we'll mention them. No worries. Magic was everywhere and dangerous. Magic wasn't rare. Wizards were common. Magical items existed in the world. Ancient empires left magical scars. So this is not a place with limitations on magic. That's for sure. But, classic, right? Magic backfired. Magic caused political tension. Magic attracted monsters, cults, and gods. So, even though magic was free, it didn't mean that TSR and creators were saying, "Oh, just plaything, nothing." It still comes down to that old school gimmick of, yeah, there always has to be some catch. There always has to be, okay, you get this, but. Okay. History was deep and often forgotten. TSR leaned hard into lost civilizations. Netheril, Mythdraenor, fallen elven realms, dead empires buried under modern nations. Adventurers were grave robbers of history, whether they liked it or not. The map that mattered, Faerun, TSR era. The Heartlands, the default adventuring zones, city-states, trade routes, constant low-grade danger, political instability, everything important eventually touched the Heartlands. The Sword Coast, before it became the thing. And TSR, important, but not dominant. A rough, dangerous frontier. Pirate activity, city rivalries, and monsters. Not yet the sanitized adventure theme park it became later. You like that? Not yet the sanitized adventure theme park it became later. The Dale Lands, a huge TSR favorite. Independent communities, strong elven legacy, constant pressure from Cormier, Zentel Keep, and monsters. Very old school D&D, in tone, of course. Because that's what it is, the old school. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the groups. Power groups in the Forgotten Realms. We're going to cover a few of them here. Okay, the Zentarum, right? A mercenary empire. Trade, espionage, intimidation. Not cartoon villains. Ruthless. How can I say? Ruthless people that just didn't believe in much. Didn't care for much. Just people that were very, fuck it, I'm taking this. I don't care about tomorrow. So They were very devious. The Zentarum were awful people. That's my personal opinion. And it's because I encountered them that way my first time. Rid Wizards of Thay, magical tyranny. From the gods to these groups, you just sometimes just go, they're just here just to screw things up. Nobody's here for a good reason. Rid Wizards of Thay, magical tyranny, eternal betrayal was common. They felt like a looming threat, not a world-ending one. So it's almost like a criminal gang. Like they're a threat for small things, but you're like, yeah, they're not going to try to run the world. It's just those guys, yeah. Right. But don't get it wrong. It doesn't mean they didn't overtake cities, want to rule places, and they would use ruthless dominance over people to do so. But would they take over the world? They didn't have that type of stretch or even aim for that, or at least it didn't seem so. No, later on, that could be argued. Awesome, Black Rose. I'll see you then. Talk to you then. Check out the rest of it for sure. I get some more to talk about. I'm going to go to NPCs. Have a good night, my friend. Cheers. Okay. Harpers. Secretive meddlers, often morally right, frequently arrogant. They helped and made things worse just as often. So the Harpers could be like, hey, we'll help, and it's pretty good help. They secure areas. But then they just do deals that were stupid. Things get blown up. And you start, it's almost like for every dollar they save you, they cost you. Right? That was the Harpers. That's the history of the Harpers. That's a good way of explaining them too, because every time it's like they did good, then they fucked up. Races in the TSR Forgotten Realms. TSR handled races with regional identity. Elves were ancient, fading, and divided. So that was that decline of Elvis going on in the Forgotten Realms. Dwarves were proud, stubborn, and slowly losing ground. So, like the elves, there's a decay. That's going away. Birth rate down. Humans were ambitious and short-sighted. Orcs, goblins, and giants were persistent threats, not jokes. Monster races felt more like cults, right? Not generic XP, bags. They felt like they were a group you had to really attend with. They had their own politics. They were trying to take over. They were represented that way too. Leaders, the whole 9 yards. So you felt like they were a little bit more alive than being someone you swing just a sword at. And there's some real truth to that when you play Forgotten Realms. If the DM really played into some of the stuff on offer. Tone of TSR Forgotten Realms. This is important. Heroic, but not clean. Epic, but not cinematic. Dangerous, but not grimdark. Full of contradictions, secrets, and half-truths. So, remember, I'm only looking at it from the TSR era, so there's an end point. So, there's a lot of things not answered at the end point if we only count TSR, right? So, remember, I'm not doing this to be me. I'm just saying, I just decided to focus on TSR. The realms weren't balanced. They were alive. That's a good way. That's a good way to, because I believe that you could bring them alive with your own ideas, but they really did have a lot of politics, and there's a lot of stuff I'm going over here, and there's so much more to go over just in the TSR era, but there's so much of a different representation of this era of stuff and NPCs and groups in a greater detail that you'll be amazed. It's not like, oh, this is the early version. No, like, this is so different in representation that it's a different version, right? Like you're looking to get different things out of the game with this intent. So purposely, the reason you're not curving away from this is there's an intent to get something. Well, what is it the game is trying to get? If you play the game, the TSR era stuff, and you experience what the game is trying to get from these things, that's when you definitely will feel the difference and what you're experiencing Forgotten Realms, say, in WotC compared to the TSR era Forgotten Realms. Again, I'm focusing on the box set, not the video games, not other material outside of that, just really the old box set. There were different versions, but I'm giving you a sort of general of what I went through personally. So, again, I'm going to have a stream later that tries to cover things I miss. How did TSR expect the realms to be used? DMs would ignore what didn't fit. Regions could contradict each other. Canon was flexible. That's very important. Remember I said you could take stuff out and put stuff back in? There was a lot of hinting at that. Ed Greenwood's notes were a toolbox, not a rule book. That was the way I understood them to be. They were a tool. They were a toolbox, not a I have to do this. I can use this. I like that too because it does something that the other worlds didn't do exactly. You really felt you were locked in with Dragonlance. But if Forgotten Realms, you're like, I don't like this. Fuck it, I'll lock in with something else. And you felt like you weren't insulting or breaking. It was just a world you could just use where it already had so much just built for you, but you could make some adjustments pretty freely and do whatever you want. Right? So, and that, again, that being able to do what you want, that flexibility and toolbox goes back to my first ever impression. And I wasn't to insult it, but it was to say, this seems like something in the vein of generic where, man, you could use it for whatever you want. And I really feel like at the end, even though there's so much content, and we're not even at the end of this, but so much content that you could follow all that, or you could play both worlds. I like that. I do like Ed Greenwood's work on the Forgotten Realms. For TSR, I'm not trying to insult the man's work. I thought it was brilliant. But now we're going to jump to the two NPCs I promised you. Simmerstar, that would be her name, a female elf. Okay, Simmerstar was an ancient elven archmage tied to the old elven magical tradition of the Forgotten Realms, long before human kingdoms dominated Faerun. He is important not because he is active in the present day of Second Ed, but because he represents the realms lost. Oh, no, sorry, she. I apologize for the language here. No, she is important, not because it's a little bit of language toss. I'm fixing this right away. To present day Second Ed, but because she represents the realms lost. So she is sort of like a representation of the decline of the elves in this world. Who is this person? Who is Simmerstar? Well, a powerful elven mage from a much earlier age, associated with the high elven magic and long-term spell craft, active during time when elves shaped the land through magic rather than politics. So she's there during the time when they're like at their height, making the world, developing the world through magic, and here she is at the end of that same run. She belonged to the era where elves built magical cities meant to last millennia, used magic patiently and carefully throughout the centuries, not campaigns. So, for a long time. Okay, why does she matter in TSR lore? Symbol of the elven decline, as I said. Simmerstar is often referenced as a reminder of ancient elven mastery, proof that modern elves and humans are living among the ruins of something greater. So they're during the greater, there to remind people what was once there. The realms are post-Golden Age, and Simmerstar is one of those ghosts of the age. So it's almost like here's one of the last beings that lived during the great height of the Forgotten Realms, the golden cities, the whatever you could imagine. And here is the same being alive, and now has seen all of it go away in that type of like multiple lifespans, right? That's how important this person is to the overall story, what's going on in the Forgotten Realms. Okay, her magic is outlived, right? Simmerstar's true legacy isn't deeds, it's leftover magic. Long duration enchantments, lingering wards, forgotten spells and artifacts. This fits TSR design perfectly. powerful NPCs that don't solve problems their abandoned magic causes them. A DM's tool, not a plot driver. TSR used Sinistar the way they like to use ancient NPCs, as a name tied to runes, spells, or relics, as a historical authority, not an active quest giver, as a flavor that makes the world feel old, right? Players were never meant to meet her. They were meant to trip over the mistakes centuries later that maybe she had caused or put in their way on purpose. How TSR DMs were expected to use Sinistar. A spell bears her name. A ruined tower was once hers. An elven ghost references her with reverence or regret. A harper or elf scholar mentions her as one of the last great ones. Sinistar is a distant, almost mythic, untouchable. Later eras would have revived her, stat blocked her, made her into a quest NPC. TSR let her stay as a legend. So, if you understand who this person is, she's someone who's connected to Elminster, very connected. I'd almost say somewhat of a student of Elminster at one point. So that's who I'm introducing you to there. And she's like at the end run. She's a very important figure in that world, but so many other figures are covered. I wanted to cover someone unique in this one. So that's the first. Next is Artemis Entreri. Artemis Entreri is the purest expression of TSR Realm's darker philosophy. Skills without virtue, discipline without purpose, survival without meaning. He isn't evil because he enjoys cruelty. He's evil because nothing else matters. Who is Entreri? Human assassin of unmatched skill. Emotionally cold, disciplined, and joyless. Defined entirely by competence. Lives by contracts, not ideology. He's there to make the money, get the kill. He doesn't have a personal belief beyond doing that. That's his focus in life. Unlike many villains in the realms, Entreri doesn't want power, doesn't want followers, doesn't want recognition. He wants to prove he is the best. That's it. Best killer. He ends people like that. Nobody does it better than him. And, well, that's him, right? Artemis, the bad guy you love. Of course, baby. Of course. Of course. Why Artemis Entreri matters? The anti-Drizzt by design. TSR intentionally positioned Entreri as a dark mirror to Drizzt. So if you look into Drizzt, this is the opposition. Drizzt versus Entreri. Drizzt, moral choice. Entreri, moral emptiness. Friendship versus isolation. Freedom versus self-imposed prison. Skills and ethics versus skills alone. Entreri. Their conflict is not about good versus evil. It's about whether skill has meaning without morality. So if there's nobody to care, doesn't matter. Like it's sort of a test of wills in that way. Okay. A villain who never monologues. This is interesting about Entreri. Doesn't explain himself. He doesn't justify his actions. He doesn't recruit or convert. TSR loved this kind of villain. That's very true. No speeches, no redemption arc, no tragic backstory dump, just action, consequences, and silence. It does represent TSR's harsh world tone, right? Something that was applied to the Forgotten Realms. Being good does not guarantee victory. Being skilled does not guarantee happiness. And Entreri proves you can win every fight and still lose your soul. And that baby is very second edition. Very second edition. His relationship to power groups, Bragan and Jarl Lax. Temporary alliance, mutual distrust, constant tension, and Trey works with others but never belongs. So there were certain people he was connected to, but he just never trusted people to say, I'm really with you. Well, to a degree. At least that's what you think. There is some attempts later, but it's never good. Zentarum and criminal networks, useful asset, never trusted, always watched. Even evil organizations feared him because he cannot be controlled. And I can fucking relate. That's why I wanted to talk with this guy. He does not care about outcomes beyond the job. Remember, he has no moral connection to the death or if he's hurt a family. Doesn't care, doesn't give a damn. How TSR expected DMs to use Artemis. Not as a recurring mustache twirler. So, or a campaign ending boss. Or a talkative antagonist. But as a sudden complication. A rival who appears, acts, and disappears. A reminder that the world is not fair and Troy works best when PCs hear rumors before meeting him. He defeats someone important off screen. He leaves survivors alive on purpose. TSR versus later era treatment. So TSR and Trey, cold, static, a threat, no safety rails. Later eras treat him a little bit differently. More sympathetic, more anti-hero, softer edges. TSR let him remain uncomfortable. See, they softened him up, but TSR allowed him to remain this cold, static threat with any safety rules. It's just there's a more sympathetic anti-hero edge later that comes to him, and that's just not what you encounter in the TSR version of Artemis. That bad guy. There's no anti-hero. He likes to kill. No emotion, kill. Not there to save you, doesn't care about the little girl. Kill everyone. Kill the little girl, kill the dog, kill everyone. That's the real Artemis from the TSR era. And I'm at the end. That's the two NPCs. I hope tonight was like a good connection night. I hope it was. I don't know. I hope. Hour and 2 minutes, and I finished everything top to bottom for Forgotten Realms. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope I've mentioned things about the gods in every detail you could imagine. Went over every area that I thought we could really talk about, like given I made notes for all this. I think I got some jabs in there, went over some things, but I just knew it was going to take a long time to get through that. Wow. I swear, I wasn't sure how long that could possibly keep going through, depending on what I had to say, but I started realizing my notes were doing a good job, right? And there's a limit on chat, so notes work, right? So I hope anyone who gets to check out the Forgotten Realms stream enjoys it. I'm going to check it back. I hope there's not a lot of glitches tonight. There was a snowstorm, and I don't want to accuse weather of badness. I did every check I could. Just a little bit still nervous about Restream and my recent issues with it. So I hope it's just more consistency going forward. Okay, next week is Dark Sun. All right. Okay. I love you.